I was sitting 3 feet away from my mother when she calmly told a judge I was unstable, dangerous, and unfit to raise my own children. I remember staring at the little gold cross on her necklace while she swore to God to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and thinking, you bought that on sale at Kohl's, you wore it to my high school graduation, you wore it when you held my hand in labor with my first baby, and now you're wearing it while you try to take those same babies away from me. Miss Hayes, the judge said, please tell the court why you believe your daughter is a danger to herself or others. My mother folded her hands like she was about to lead a prayer circle. Your Honor, she began, voice soft and steady, the voice she used for casseroles at church potlucks and PTA meetings. My daughter Rachel is not well. She has struggled with depression for years. She has panic attacks. She drinks more than she admits. I have witnessed her screaming at the children, leaving them alone for long stretches of time, and on multiple occasions she told me she wished she could just disappear. I am terrified that one day she'll act on it, and my grandchildren will be left without a mother. Behind her in the gallery, my 12-year-old son, Ethan, squeezed his little sister Lily's hand. They both looked like someone had dropped them into the wrong movie. My ex-husband, Mark, sat behind them, jaw tight, eyes on the front of the courtroom. My younger brother, Eric, was next to him, arms crossed, eyes flicking between me and our mother like he still hadn't decided whose side he was on. My attorney, Maya, leaned closer to me and whispered, "Don't react." But my hands were already trembling in my lap. I wanted to stand up and yell, to tell the world that the woman on the stand had been begging to move into my house 2 years ago because she didn't want to waste money on rent, that she'd offered to co-sign on my mortgage after my divorce and said things like, "We women have to stick together," that she'd cried when I said I might move across the country for a job because family is all we have. And now here she was turning, "I had a panic attack once in my kitchen," into "she is suicidal and neglectful." How often would you say these episodes occur? The judge asked. My mother pursed her lips, the way she always did when she was about to lie but wanted it to sound like a sad, reluctant truth. "At least once a week," she said. "Sometimes more. She gets overwhelmed and shuts down. I have come over many times to find the children making their own dinner while she is locked in her bedroom, crying. I've been the one to soothe them, to make sure homework is done, to get them to school on time. Someone has to be the stable one." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Once a week. That was impressive, considering that for the last 6 months she had only seen us maybe twice a month. And one of those times she had shown up unannounced and hammered on my front door at 10 p.m. because I hadn't answered her texts fast enough. "And the alcohol?" my mother's lawyer prompted gently. "Can you tell the court about that?" She nodded. "Rachel drinks wine every night," she said. "Sometimes a whole bottle. She jokes about being a wine mom on social media, but I have seen her slurring her words, stumbling. She drives the children after she's been drinking. I've begged her to get help." I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me like acid. Yes, I drank wine 1 or 2 glasses after the kids were in bed. Yes, I had posted a stupid meme once about "mommy needs her grape juice." Something I regretted immediately when I realized how bad it looked placed next to the anonymous report that came into Child Protective Services 3 months later. "We received an allegation," the CPS worker had said at my door, "that you have driven intoxicated with your children in the car." I hadn't. I never have. But suddenly my dumb attempt at internet humor was a screenshot in my mother's neatly labeled evidence folder. "Miss Hayes," the judge said, "did you ever witness your daughter physically harming your grandchildren?" My mother hesitated, just long enough to be theatrical. Not physically, no," she said. "But emotional damage is damage too, Your Honor. She tells them things no child should hear. She leans on them, makes them her therapists. She cries in front of them. She tells them their father abandoned them." My stomach dropped. That one hurt, not because it was entirely false, but because it was twisted just enough. After my marriage fell apart, there were nights I cried on the couch after the kids were in bed. There were days I snapped and said things about their father I shouldn't have, things I later apologized for. But my mother's version made it sound like I hosted nightly trauma sessions where I used my kids as emotional support animals. Thank you, the judge said, making a note. You may step down. My mother walked past me, eyes shining with carefully unshed tears. She wouldn't look at me, but she squeezed the cross on her necklace like God was her co-counsel. Your witness, the judge said, nodding at Maya. Miss Patel. Maya stood, smoothing her blazer. She was in her early 40s too, but somehow moved like she had steel in her spine. Miss Hayes, she said gently, you testified that your daughter has long struggled with depression, is that correct? Yes, my mother said. Since she was a teenager, really? She was always sensitive. Did you encourage her to seek treatment? Maya asked. Counseling, medication, anything like that? My mother nodded. Of course. I'm her mother. I've always wanted what's best for her. Maya tilted her head. So when she began seeing a therapist 18 months ago and started medication prescribed by a psychiatrist, were you supportive? Something flickered in my mother's eyes. I didn't know about that, she said. She told me she was fine. Maya raised an eyebrow. You're under oath, Miss Hayes. Isn't it true that Rachel sent you a text message on May 3rd last year that says, and I quote, Mom, I've started therapy, and I'm trying a low-dose antidepressant. I know you don't believe in pills, but I need to do this for myself and the kids. Followed by your response, you don't need strangers in your head, you need to pray more and stop feeling sorry for yourself? My mother's lawyer objected. Relevance. The judge overruled him. You may answer. My mother's cheeks flushed. I may have said that, she murmured. So while you appear very concerned now about her mental health, at the time she sought professional help, you discouraged it, Maya said calmly. No further questions about that. Let's move on. You also testified that you have come over many times to find the children fending for themselves while Rachel is locked in her room crying. Is that correct? Yes, my mother said. She's overwhelmed. Can you provide specific dates? Maya asked. Even approximate. How many times in the last 6 months? My mother opened and closed her mouth. Well, I don't keep a calendar, she said, but it's been frequent. Maya nodded, flipping through a folder. For the court's reference, my client has provided school attendance records, pediatrician notes, and statements from both children's teachers indicating they have been consistently prepared, on time, and well cared for. No concerns of neglect have ever been noted. Additionally, we have text messages from you, Ms. Hayes, complaining that Rachel never lets you see the kids anymore, and that she is keeping them from you, dated within those same 6 months. My mother's face went stiff, her jaw clenching the way it used to when I didn't smile in family photos. Context matters, she said tightly. Maya smiled politely. It does, Ms. Hayes. It really does. She looked at the judge. No further questions for this witness at this time. As my mother stepped down, she finally met my eyes. Just for a second there was triumph there, yes, but also something else, something like hurt, like betrayal, like somehow I was the one who had started this war, not the woman who had filed for emergency guardianship of my life. We'll call our next witness after a brief recess, the judge said, banging her gavel lightly. Court is in recess for 15 minutes. As people stood and stretched, my legs felt like they were filled with wet sand. I sat there, staring at the scuffed wood of the defendant's table, at the manila folders piled in front of me, at the blue pen I'd been twisting between my fingers so hard the cap had cracked, and I wondered, not for the first time, how the hell we had gotten here. Because if you asked my mother, she would tell you it started when I changed after my divorce, when I became selfish and difficult and ungrateful for help. But if you ask me, it started the day my father died and my mother realized she could no longer control him, so she turned her attention to controlling me instead. My father, Tom, was the quiet sort of man who fixed things for a living and fixed things for everyone else on his off days. He worked HVAC for 30 years. If you lived within 20 miles of our town and your air conditioner went out in July, he was the guy you called. He wasn't warm exactly, but he was steady. He smelled like sweat and Freon and coffee, and when he hugged you, it felt like being wrapped in a weighted blanket. My mother, on the other hand, was loud, bright, the kind of woman who joined every committee and quickly became chair. She was PTA president, church volunteer coordinator, the person people called when they needed meals delivered after surgery or a fundraiser organized. Everyone in town loved my mother, or at least acted like they did. "Your mom is amazing," people would say. "She's always doing so much for everyone." And I would smile and nod and not mention that sometimes she did so much for everyone else that there wasn't much left for us. Growing up, I learned early that my feelings were less important than her reputation. If I cried, she would hiss, "Stop it, people are looking." If I didn't want to hug someone, she would push me forward. "Don't be rude, Rachel." When I was 13 and told her I thought I might be depressed, that sometimes I lay in bed and felt heavy and empty and scared for no reason, she stroked my hair and said, "You're too young to talk like that, sweetheart. That's just hormones. You need to get outside more, help me at church, you'll feel better." When I didn't, she started calling me dramatic whenever I frowned. My younger brother, Eric, was the golden child, not because he was exceptionally talented, but because he fit my mother's idea of a son perfectly. He played soccer, cracked jokes, gave her big bear hugs. He could do no wrong. When he crashed the family car at 17, she cried and called it boys being boys. When I got a B- in math once, she grounded me because, "You're smarter than this, Rachel." I moved out at 18, went to community college, then transferred to a state school 2 hours away. For a brief window of time, I thought maybe I'd escape the gravitational pull of my mother's expectations. Then I got pregnant at 24, married Mark at 25, and discovered that when you have children, family has a way of pulling you back in. Mark and I were never a fairy tale couple, but we were solid for a while. He worked in IT, I started in office admin, then moved into HR. We bought a small starter home, had Ethan, then Lily. We fought about money and chores and his mother's habit of dropping by unannounced, but nothing that felt unfixable, until he had an affair with a woman from his gym. I found out because my mother noticed, of course she did, she knows everyone. "I saw Mark at Applebee's with a brunette who was not you," she said on the phone one night. "They were awfully cozy." I laughed it off, told myself it was a misunderstanding, until a week later I found the text messages on his phone. It was as if the floor dropped out from under me. Everything after that felt like free fall. Counseling, shouting matches, ugly crying in the laundry room so the kids wouldn't hear. My mother showed up a lot during that time, casserole dishes in hand. "We will get through this," she said, meaning we as in her and me, not me and my husband. She never liked Mark much, thought he was weak, not a real man like my father. I tried for a year, and then one night after we'd gone round and round the same argument for the 100th time and Mark admitted he still saw the other woman sometimes just to talk, I heard myself say, "I want a divorce," like someone else was speaking for me. The divorce itself was brutal but fairly standard. We did mediation, agreed on 50-50 custody, child support, sold our little house because neither of us could afford it alone. I rented a 2-bedroom apartment near the kids' school, told myself it was temporary, that I'd buy a new place once I got my feet under me. My mother was there through all of it. She babysat, she helped me sort papers, she called every night to check on me, to share some Bible verse about perseverance. For the first time in my life, I felt like she was really on my side, not just because it meant she could cluck her tongue at my ex-son-in-law with moral superiority, though I'm sure that was part of it. "You and me against the world," she would say, half joking, and I believed her. I shouldn't have. After about a year, the apartment life started to wear on me. The kids needed more space, I wanted a yard again. Somewhere to plant tomatoes like my dad used to. My credit was okay, but my income alone didn't stretch far in our area. My mother saw me scrolling listings at her kitchen table one Sunday and pounced. "What if I helped?" she said. "I could co-sign. We could put both our names on the mortgage. My credit is excellent, and it would be like investing in my grandchildren's future." I hesitated. "Mom, that's a lot to ask." "You're not asking," she said. "I'm offering. Would you rather pay some landlord's mortgage or pay into something that will someday be yours?" She said yours, But what I heard was mine too. Still, the numbers made sense. With her income and mine, we could qualify for a decent 3-bedroom with a yard and a little office where I could work from home. We talked about it with the loan officer, who recommended we both be on the title and the mortgage. Your family, he said, like that was some kind of magical safety net. It'll be fine. I signed, she signed, and suddenly we owned a house together. My name and hers side by side on paper. I didn't read as closely as I should have. This is just until you're back on your feet, she said. Once you get promoted, we can refinance in your name alone. I wanted to believe her. I moved into the little Cape Cod with the blue shutters and the sagging back fence like it was a happy ending after the wreckage of my marriage. For a while it felt that way. We painted the kids' rooms the colors they picked. I planted tomatoes in the tiny patch of dirt by the back door. I walked barefoot on the hardwood floors at night, listening to the sounds of Ethan snoring and Lily's soft sleepy sighs, feeling like maybe finally we were okay. My mother came over a lot at first, always with some new curtain or throw pillow. I saw this and thought of your living room, she'd say. She would sit at my table, making notes on a legal pad about expenses. It's just to keep track, she assured me. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. I don't want you to feel beholden. We'll split what's fair. I didn't mind. It felt adult, responsible, like we were partners in this little project called my life. The first crack showed up over something stupid like it always does. I had started a new position at work, a promotion with more responsibility and the option to work from home 3 days a week, which meant more meetings, more deadlines, and more juggling with the kids' schedules. My mother had gotten used to swooping in whenever she pleased, letting herself in with the spare key, dropping off bags of groceries or tidying up my kitchen. One day, I was on a video call with my boss when my mother barreled into my home office, waving a bill. Why wasn't I told about this insurance increase? She demanded. I scrambled to mute, heart pounding. Mom, I'm working, I hissed, pointing at the screen. She crossed her arms and stood just off camera, waiting. After the call, she unleashed on me. You are so ungrateful, she said. I am breaking my back to help you keep this roof over your head, and you can't even answer my questions. You shut me out, you act like I'm some nuisance. If I walked away, you'd be on the street. The words hit me like stones. That's not true, I said, stung. I pay the majority of the mortgage, Mom, and the utilities, you know that. You said this was a partnership. She scoffed. Partnership, please. You'd never have qualified for this house without me. You'd be in some dumpy apartment if it weren't for my name. You think that job of yours makes you independent, but I can snap my fingers and this whole thing can disappear. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment she realized the power she held. Not as a safety net, but as a leash. Over the next year, the leash got tighter. She started insisting on family dinners twice a week at my house, showing up early, commenting on my cooking, my housekeeping. You're letting the kids eat too much junk. You've put on weight, are you still taking those pills? I told you they'd make you fat. She'd say these things in front of Ethan and Lily, laughing like it was all a joke. When I gently asked her not to critique me in front of them, she rolled her eyes. You're too sensitive, Rachel. Kids need to see their parents aren't perfect. When I started dating a little, dipping my toe into the murky waters of online apps, she ramped up the commentary. You're wasting your time, she said. Men your age just want a nurse or a purse. You already have 2 kids, nobody decent will want that. Your focus should be on those children, not on your hormones. She said it in front of Ethan once, and I watched my son's face fall. Later, he asked me quietly, Are we why you're alone? I held him and promised him that was not true, that if I was alone, it was because I would rather be alone than be with someone who didn't treat me and them right. But the damage was done. My mother had planted herself in the middle of my relationship with my own children. The panic attack happened on a Tuesday. Work had been hell, the kids both had projects due, the washing machine had died mid-cycle, and my mother had left me 5 voicemails about some charity auction she wanted me to help with. I was standing at the kitchen sink, hands in soapy water, when my chest suddenly felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. My heart raced, my vision narrowed, I thought I was having a heart attack. I slid to the floor gasping. Ethan found me wide-eyed and shaking. "Mom, what's wrong?" he cried. I couldn't answer. He grabbed my phone with trembling hands and called 911. The paramedics came. By the time they arrived, the worst had passed. They took my vitals, told me it was likely a panic attack, recommended I follow up with my doctor. My mother pulled into the driveway as they were packing up. She must have seen the flashing lights. She ran up the walkway, eyes wild. "What happened?" she demanded. "What did she do now?" She said. She like I wasn't sitting on my own couch with an oxygen monitor on my finger, my face burning with shame, the kids clinging to me. "Ma'am, your daughter had a panic episode," the paramedic explained. "Her heart is fine, but she should see someone, maybe talk to a counselor." My mother clucked her tongue. "She doesn't need a counselor, she needs to get over herself," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. As soon as they left, she turned on me. "You scared those children half to death," she hissed. "Lying there like some tragic heroine. This is what I've been talking about, Rachel, you can't handle life, you can't handle being on your own. God forbid the kids had been with their father, they'd have had no one. You should be grateful I live close enough to come." I cried myself hoarse in the shower that night so the kids wouldn't hear. The next week, I found out someone had made a report to CPS about a mother collapsing in front of her children due to suspected substance abuse. The worker who came to the door was kind, professional. She inspected the house, talked to the kids, asked me to take a drug test, which I did. Came back clean. The case was marked unsubstantiated and closed, but it was still a file with my name on it, still a shadow. I didn't need a detective to guess who had made the report. 2 months later, I found the folder that would finally rip the blinders off my eyes. My mother had asked me to come over to help her sort paperwork. Her dining table was covered in neat stacks of manila folders, each labeled in her neat handwriting. Church, utilities, medical. I was flipping through a pile when I saw my own name on a tab. Rachel. Curiosity tugged. I opened it. Inside were printed screenshots of my social media. The wine mom meme, a photo of a messy living room on a bad day, comments I had made about being tired, overwhelmed. There were also copies of my medication list, a note from my doctor about my depression diagnosis, copies of the CPS visit summary, and, chillingly, a half-completed set of forms for emergency temporary guardianship. The proposed guardian, listed in tidy script, applicant's mother, Susan Hayes. Under reasons for guardianship, she had written, daughter suffers from severe mental illness, is unable to care properly for minor children or manage finances, repeatedly refuses offered help, children at risk without intervention. My hands shook as I flipped the pages. There were even printouts of text messages between me and her, highlighted in yellow, my replies circled in red. "You are making me crazy," I had written once in frustration. She had circled crazy like it was a confession. "What are you doing?" my mother snapped suddenly at my elbow. I looked up at her, folder in hand. "What is this?" I asked, voice low and flat. "Why do you have this? Why are you filling out guardianship forms?" For a moment, just a moment, I saw something like fear in her eyes. Then it hardened. "You went through my private papers," she said, outraged. "How dare you? How dare I?" I repeated, "How dare you, Mom? This is my life, my kids, my medical information. Why are you collecting this? Why does this say I can't manage my own finances? I pay my bills, the kids are thriving. What are you doing?" She snatched the folder from my hands. "You're overreacting," she said. "It's just in case, Rachel, a backup plan. If something happens to you, someone has to be ready to step in. Do you want your children in foster care?" "You listed me as severely mentally ill," I said, my voice rising. "You told CPS I'm a drunk. You have been building a case against me. You didn't talk to me, you didn't ask what I needed, you went behind my back. Because you can't see how bad it's gotten," she shot back. You're sinking and dragging those children with you. You can't keep a man, you can't handle stress, you collapsed on the kitchen floor because of some bills and a busy day. What happens when something really bad happens, when your job lets you go, when Mark stops paying child support? You think I'm the enemy. I'm the only one who cares enough to do something. You care about control, I said, shaking. You care about that house, about how it looks to people if your daughter is divorced and depressed. You don't care about me. You never have. She slapped me. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to shock me into silence. Don't you ever say I don't care, she hissed. I have given you everything. I put my name on that mortgage. I have saved you from your own bad choices again and again. If I wanted to, I could take that house tomorrow and you'd be out on the street. Show me a little gratitude. The room spun. Old childhood patterns screamed at me to apologize, to back down, to tell her she was right, that I was sorry. But I thought of Ethan's frightened face during my panic attack, of Lily whispering that she didn't like it when Grandma yelled at me, of that folder full of my life cut up and rearranged to make me look like a monster, and something in me finally snapped in a different direction. If you try to take my kids, I said quietly, if you file this, I will fight you with everything I have. You will never see them again. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide that, she said. You're sick. You need help. And if you won't accept it, the court will make you. I left, shaking, drove home on autopilot, parked in my driveway and sat in the car until my heart stopped trying to beat out of my chest. Then I did the thing I had been putting off for years. I called a lawyer. Maya was recommended by a woman in my divorce support group. She specializes in family law and guardianship abuse, she'd said. I didn't even know that was a thing, guardianship abuse. But apparently it happens enough that there are niche attorneys for it. I sat in Maya's office 2 days later, hands wrapped around a paper cup of bad coffee, and spilled everything. My divorce, the house, my mother's help, the CPS visit, the folder, the slap. She listened, expression serious but not shocked. Unfortunately, she said when I finished, none of this surprises me. I've seen this pattern a lot. A widowed parent entangles themselves financially, uses that leverage to control. Then when the adult child starts to assert independence or set boundaries, suddenly they're unstable and need to be protected, especially if there are grandkids and property involved. She tapped her pen against the legal pad. Here's the good news. You're already in therapy, you have documentation of your diagnosis and treatment, you have a stable job, your kids are doing well in school, the CPS report was unsubstantiated, and your mother's own notes and forms show premeditation. She isn't a concerned parent acting in the moment. She's been building a case. I gulped. What do we do? Maya's eyes were steady. We get ahead of it, she said. I'm going to have you sign new powers of attorney, medical and financial, naming someone you trust, not your mother. We're going to move toward refinancing that house into your name only, or if that's not possible right away, we're going to put a legal agreement in place that restricts her ability to force a sale. We're going to document her harassment, the CPS report, the slap, and we're going to be ready, because if she's gone this far, she's not going to stop on her own. Do you really think she'd go to court? I asked, still clinging to a shred of hope. She's my mother. Maya looked at me with something like compassion and something like tired recognition. People do terrible things to feel in control, she said, especially when they can wrap it in the language of concern. Prepare yourself for that reality, and then if she doesn't, you're pleasantly surprised. She was right, of course. My mother did not stop. 2 weeks later, I got a thick envelope in the mail. In the matter of Hayes versus Hayes, petition for emergency temporary guardianship. I felt physically ill reading my own name on that paper. The allegations were a greatest hits compilation of every bad moment in the last 2 years, ripped from context and arranged like a horror show. Respondent collapsed in front of minor children due to panic attack. Children traumatized. Respondent frequently intoxicated. Jokes about alcoholism. Respondent unstable mood. Rage episodes toward children. The petition asked that my mother be given temporary authority over all my major decisions and be granted temporary custody of Ethan and Lily until such time as respondent can demonstrate stability. She's trying to erase me, I whispered, hands shaking. Maya filed our response immediately, pointing out the glaring holes, the lack of medical evidence of instability, the unsubstantiated CPS report. My therapist wrote a letter, my psychiatrist wrote a letter, both attesting that I was compliant with treatment, not suicidal, not psychotic, functional, appropriate insight and judgment. I clung to those phrases like life rafts. Things got ugly at home. My mother called daily, leaving voicemails alternating between pleading and threatening. If you just agreed to let the kids live with me during the week, we could make this all go away, she'd say then. Your lawyer is bleeding you dry, Rachel, think about your future. When I stopped answering, she started showing up, pounding on the door. I told the kids not to let her in if I wasn't home. She accused me of turning them against her. She called Mark, my ex, tried to enlist him. We need to get those kids away from her, she said. She's falling apart. Mark, to his credit, called me and told me everything she'd said. I may be a cheating idiot, he said, but I know you're a good mom, Rach. I'm not joining whatever crusade she's on. I almost cried with relief. Thank you, I said. That shouldn't be a favor, it should be basic decency, but thank you. She called Eric too, of course. My brother, who had moved 2 states away and only came home for holidays and when he needed money, suddenly was around more, taking Mom to lunch, helping her with errands. He showed up at my house one night, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. Mom says you're not doing well, he said. She says you're lashing out, that the kids are scared of you. I stared at him. You've been here exactly twice in the last year, I said. Both times for Christmas. You don't call, you don't ask how we are, and now you're concerned. He looked away, ashamed. I'm trying to stay out of it, he said. But she's my mom too. She's worried. She's worried about losing control, I snapped. She's worried about her image, about the house, about the fact that I told her no for once. This isn't about my mental health. It's about her need to be the center of everything. He sighed. You know she's not going to back down, he said. She told me if the court doesn't grant the guardianship, she's going to change her will, leave everything to me. She said you don't deserve a dime after what you've put her through. Something in me went cold. She can leave her Tupperware collection to the Pope for all I care, I said. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this so my kids don't grow up thinking it's normal for someone to use love as a weapon. Eric looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'm not testifying against you, he said quietly. I told her that. I won't lie for her. Whatever you two have going on, I'm not getting dragged into it. It wasn't the rousing show of support I might have wanted, but in a war zone, neutrality can feel like a small mercy. The weeks between the petition and the hearing were some of the longest of my life. I worked, I parented, I went to therapy, I kept a log of every interaction with my mother, every voicemail, every unannounced visit. At Maya's urging, I installed a camera on my front porch. If she tries to cause a scene, we'll have proof of who is escalating, she said. There was one incident that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. I came home from the grocery store with the kids one Saturday to find my mother in my backyard with Lily. They were sitting on the swing, my mother's arm around her, both of them eating popsicles. My mother had hopped the fence from the alley. I hadn't given her a key to the gate. What are you doing here? I said, trying to keep my voice level for Lily's sake. Grandma came to surprise us, Lily said, cheerfully oblivious. She says she might be living with us soon. Isn't that great, Mommy? Then we can have ice cream all the time. My heart pounded. Inside, I told the kids. Now. They went reluctantly. My mother stood. You are creating a hostile environment, she said quietly. The court will see that. All I've ever wanted is to help you, and you treat me like a criminal. You broke into my yard, I said. You are telling my 8-year-old that she might live with you instead of me. You filed to have me declared incompetent. If that's your version of help, I don't want it. She smiled a small chilling smile. You'll understand when you're older, she said, the old joke twisted into a threat. The day of the hearing, I thought I might throw up in the courthouse bathroom and never come out. Maya kept me moving through security into the courtroom, to the stiff wooden bench at the front. Breathe, she reminded me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. You're prepared. You have truth and documentation on your side. It didn't feel like enough when I watched my mother swear to tell the truth, when I heard her spin our life into something unrecognizable. But then it was our turn. The respondent calls Dr. Lewis, Maya said. My therapist took the stand, calm and professional. I have been treating Ms. Walker for 18 months, she said. She has a diagnosis of major depressive disorder. Moderate, currently in partial remission. She is compliant with treatment. Insight and judgment are intact. She has never expressed suicidal intent or plan. We have specifically discussed her parenting, and in my professional opinion, she is an appropriate, caring, engaged mother who is actively working to manage her mental health. My mother's lawyer tried to poke holes. Isn't it true that depressed individuals can deteriorate quickly? He asked. She didn't flinch. Anyone can deteriorate quickly under enough stress, she said. Depression does not equal incapacity, and there is no evidence of psychosis, mania, substance abuse, or cognitive decline here. My psychiatrist echoed her. My kids' teachers wrote letters that Maya submitted as exhibits. Ethan is a conscientious, kind student, always prepared, supported at home. Lily comes to school clean, appropriately dressed, talkative about home activities with her mother. Mark took the stand. I don't think I breathed the entire time he walked to the front. Mr. Walker, Maya said, do you believe your ex-wife is an unfit mother? He swallowed hard, glanced at me, then at the judge. No, he said firmly. She's a good mom, better than I deserve, honestly. She's been the constant in the kids' lives. I'm the one who blew up the family, not her. We've had disagreements, sure, but I have never seen her neglect or abuse our children. Did Ms. Hayes contact you about this petition? Maya asked. He nodded. Yes, she called me several times, said we had to save the kids from Rachel, that she was losing her mind, tried to get me to join the petition, said if the kids lived with her full-time she'd make sure I never lost my weekends. When I told her I didn't see anything that warranted taking the kids away from their mother, she got angry, said I was just like my spineless father, and hung up. My mother glared at him like he'd betrayed her on national television. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, palms sweating, throat dry. Maya kept her questions straightforward. Rachel, do you love your children? More than anything, I said, my voice cracking. Have you ever intentionally harmed them? No. Have there been moments you wish you'd handled better? I laughed bitterly. Of course. I'm human. I've yelled, I've said things I regret, I've apologized and tried to do better. But I have never hit them, never neglected them, never put them in danger. She guided me through the panic attack, the CPS visit, my decision to go to therapy and start medication. She asked about my mother's involvement in our lives, the cosign mortgage, the folder, the slap. At one point, she asked the judge's permission to play an audio recording. This was taken on Rachel's front porch camera 2 weeks ago, she said. My mother's voice filled the room, distorted slightly by the outdoor microphone but clear enough. If you just sign the papers, we could all stop this nonsense, she said. You could go somewhere and heal, or whatever you want to call it. I'd have the kids in the house, you wouldn't have to worry about a thing. My own voice, flat and tired, replied, They're my kids, Mom. It's my house. Why is your solution always give everything to me and disappear? My mother's reply made even the judge's eyebrows rise. Because you ruin everything you touch, Rachel. You always have. The recording stopped. The silence afterward was heavy. My mother's lawyer objected, muttered something about lack of context. But the damage was done. The judge had heard it, so had everyone else. Finally, my mother's lawyer got his turn to cross-examine me. He did his best to paint me as unstable. "You admit you have depression," he said. "You admit you had a breakdown in front of your children. You admit you drink regularly. You admit you've yelled at them. You admit you've said you feel like you're going crazy. How can this court be confident you won't in fact break?" I took a breath, thought of Maya's advice, thought of every night I'd stayed up memorizing phrases. "I have depression," I said. "That's true. I had a panic attack, also true. I drink a glass or two of wine some nights and stop completely when CPS came because I didn't even want the appearance of a problem. I have yelled, I have apologized, I have done the work to be better. What I have not done is abandon them, manipulate them, or lie to them. I have not broken into their home, called anonymous hotlines on them, or tried to strip them of their autonomy under the guise of help. My mother doesn't see the difference between needing support and being incapable, but there is one, and I am standing right here." He smirked. "So you don't think your mother is acting out of concern?" I met my mother's eyes. "I think my mother is terrified of being alone and not in control," I said. "And I think she would rather burn my life down than admit that." When the arguments finally ended and the judge called a lunch recess before delivering her ruling, I felt wrung dry. Maya squeezed my shoulder. "You did well," she said. "Now we wait." Waiting, it turned out, was both the shortest and longest 30 minutes of my life. When we filed back into the courtroom, I could barely hear over the rush of blood in my ears. The judge shuffled her papers, looked over her glasses at all of us, and spoke. "I have reviewed the petition, the response, the exhibits, and the testimony," she said, "and I do not find sufficient evidence to grant emergency guardianship or custody to Ms. Hayes. The burden of proof in such matters is appropriately high, as we are talking about removing an adult's fundamental rights and a parent's relationship with their children. Ms. Walker has demonstrated that she is actively managing her mental health, is able to work, maintain a household, and care for her children. While there have been isolated incidents of distress, they do not rise to the level of incapacity or neglect." I exhaled so sharply it was almost a sob. The judge held up a hand. "That said," she continued, "it is clear to me that the relationship between Ms. Walker and her mother is highly conflictual, and that this conflict is spilling over into the children's lives. That is not in their best interest. Therefore, I am denying the petition in its entirety, and I am also issuing the following orders." She looked at my mother, her gaze hardening. "Ms. Hayes, you will cease all attempts to contact Child Protective Services, healthcare providers, or any other authorities regarding your daughter, unless there is an immediate, verifiable emergency. You will not appear at her home uninvited. You will not enter her property without explicit consent. Do you understand?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. "But I'm just trying to." "Do you understand?" the judge repeated. My mother's shoulders slumped. "Yes," she whispered. "Furthermore," the judge said, "any future petitions you file regarding guardianship or custody must be accompanied by objective evidence from professionals, not merely your personal opinion. Failure to comply may result in sanctions, including but not limited to fines and restrictions on your contact with the grandchildren." My mother's face crumpled. For the first time since this began, she looked less like a self-righteous crusader and more like a frightened aging woman who had finally encountered a wall she couldn't push through. The judge turned to Mark and me. "The existing custody arrangement between you remains in place," she said. "I strongly encourage both of you to insulate your children from this conflict to the greatest extent possible. They should not be used as messengers or weapons. If there are future issues, consider family counseling." She banged her gavel. "Court is adjourned." The room exploded into movement. My legs wobbled. Maya handed me tissues I didn't remember taking. Ethan and Lily flew at me, nearly knocking me over. "Does this mean we're not going to live with Grandma?" Ethan asked, his voice small. I hugged them so tightly they squeaked. "You're staying with me," I said. "We're okay." Over their heads, I saw my mother watching us, something like devastation and fury battling in her eyes. She opened her mouth, but Maya stepped neatly between us. "Now is not the time," she said, firm. "My client will be in touch through counsel if needed." We walked out into the pale afternoon light, the courthouse doors heavy behind us. The air felt different, thinner, more fragile. The aftermath has been complicated. That's the only word that fits. Legally, the judge's orders gave me grounds to file for a protective order when my mother left 13 voicemails in one day a week later, alternating between sobbing apologies and threats to go to the news about my abuse. I didn't want to. Some part of me still wanted to believe she would calm down, that we could have some version of a family. But then Ethan told me she'd cornered him at school pickup, whispering that if he ever felt unsafe, he could call her and she'd come rescue him. Without telling me, she was still trying to recruit my own child into her campaign. So I filed. The court granted a 1-year no-contact order. She is not allowed to contact me directly, not allowed to come to my home, not allowed to approach the kids without my or Mark's consent. I cried the day it was approved, not out of regret, but out of grief for the illusion I had finally let die. We're working on refinancing the house into my name alone. It's a slow process, but my credit and income are better now. Slapping her name off my deed feels symbolic in a way I can't quite put into words. Like finally cutting the last visible strand of a tangled web. The kids are in therapy now too. Ethan has a lot of questions. "Why would Grandma try to take us if she loves us?" he asked once. I told him the truth as gently as I could. "Sometimes people confuse love with control," I said. "They think if they can make everyone do what they want, nothing bad will happen. Grandma is scared of being alone. She thought if she was in charge of everything, she'd be safe. But that's not okay, and it's not your job to fix it." Lily misses her. In the simple way 8-year-olds miss people who bought them ice cream and read them stories. I don't badmouth my mother to them, but I also don't pretend everything is fine. Grandma made some unsafe choices, I say. And until she can make safe ones, we have to have boundaries. Boundaries, that word my mother always spat like an insult, has become my lifeline. My brother Eric sends the occasional text. "Mom's been asking about you. She's not doing great. She says you tore the family apart." I used to engage, to justify, to explain. Now I simply reply, "She chose her actions, I chose to protect my kids." He hasn't visited in months. I assume he's back to his life far away. Maybe that's his version of survival. My father would probably be heartbroken to see us like this. His family split, his wife and daughter estranged. But sometimes I think he'd also understand. He spent decades swallowing things, smoothing over, working double shifts to keep the peace, and it killed him at 58. I'm not willing to die that way, emotionally or literally, for anyone's idea of family. There are nights I lie awake in the quiet house, listening to the soft whir of the ceiling fan and the distant hum of the highway, and I think about my mother alone in her little condo across town. Because yes, she finally sold the old house she and my father shared, the house where he built bunk beds and patched drywall. She sold it without telling me, to a young couple with a baby on the way. I drove by once and saw a new swing set in the yard, someone else's laundry on the line. I cried in the car, mourning a place as much as a person. My mother cut me out of her will, according to Eric. She left everything to him and a few charities. I expected that. I don't care. I make my own money. I'm building my own safety nets. But what hurts, what really hurts, is knowing she tells anyone who will listen that I stole her grandchildren, that I'm ungrateful and brainwashed by some lawyer, that she tried to save me and was punished for it. In her story, she is a martyr, I am the villain, and there's nothing I can do to change that narrative in her head. I can only live my own. People on the internet love a neat moral, a clear line between right and wrong, but real life is messy. I know my mother thinks she loves me in her own twisted way. I know she's scared of aging, of losing relevance, of facing the fact that her husband is gone and her children have lives that don't revolve around her. I can empathize with that fear and still refuse to let it swallow me. So here I am, a year out from the day my mother sat in a courtroom and tried to convince a judge I was crazy, raising my kids, paying my mortgage, going to therapy, making dinner, checking homework, laughing at dumb TikToks with Ethan, braiding Lily's hair while she tells me about her latest obsession. Ordinary life, extraordinary in its own small way. Sometimes I catch myself reaching for my phone to send my mother a picture. A story, a joke, old habits die hard. Then I remember the folder on her table, the satisfaction in her voice when she thought she'd almost won, and I put the phone down. I don't know what the future looks like. Maybe when the protective order expires, she'll reach out and we'll try family therapy. Maybe she'll double down and try another legal angle. Maybe she'll never speak to me again. I can't control that. All I can control is the example I set for my kids, that love without respect is not enough, that blood isn't a free pass to abuse, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is be the villain in someone else's story to be the hero in your own. So I guess that's my question to anyone reading this who's been in a similar spot. If your own mother tried to prove you were crazy in court just to take your kids in your house, would you ever let her back into your life? Or is closing that door for good the only way to keep your family truly safe?